Bitcoin's up 60% year to date. Gold is not. Why is gold going down in price? And what do you think happens to Bitcoin's price through the end of the year?
Well, again, there's only a few months left. I know most of you guys think 100,000. I mean, that's pretty much been the standard, 100,000 by the end of the year. And I think a lot of you are still clinging to that. I guess it's possible. I think I was on your show or somebody's show, and I said, yeah, I think it's possible Bitcoin can go to 100,000. Then I'm reading all these headlines. Peter Schiff forecasts $100,000 Bitcoin. Right, so I actually think it's not likely to hit 100,000. So I think it's more likely not to go there. And obviously, there's only a few months of the year left for it to do that. But I guess if I was just going to flip a coin up or down on Bitcoin, I guess I'd pick down. But I mean it could be up. But I think the market for Bitcoin, to me, again, looks toppy once again. We just had this huge pump and dump over El Salvador. Everybody was excited. Everybody was buying in solidarity. And then all of a sudden, the day of the El Salvador inaugurates Bitcoin, and there's 1 hour, and there's a massive dump, and the price goes from, 52,000 down to whatever, 42,000, whatever it was, almost or over a 15% drop in under an hour. And so that might have been a key reversal that day, that week. We'll see how this month looks, but I thought last week was a technically very weak week for Bitcoin. And so it may end up, getting, finishing the year closer to that 30,000 support than the 50,000 resistance. And it's also possible that it could break below that and go much lower. If it doesn't do it by the end of this year, I think it's going to do it eventually. I think this is a bubble, as well as the other 12,000 some odd cryptocurrencies that currently exist and that compete with Bitcoin.
Peter.
Yeah.
My question would be, what would have to happen, if anything, kind of for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin network for you to change your mind and reverse course?
Yeah, I answered that question on somebody else's show, and then somebody, took it out of context and made a video out of it to try to say that I'm endorsing Bitcoin, because I talked about all the things that haven't happened to Bitcoin, that if they did happen, well, then I, would probably have to change my mind. But, none of those things have actually happened yet. But, again, what would have to happen is Bitcoin would actually have to succeed as money, right? So I would have to see a demonstration. And even if you just took El Salvador, for example, right? Because hey, that's legal tender. If I actually saw El Salvador function, let's say for a longer period of time, but where everything was priced in Bitcoin, forget dollars. You got a salary, it was expressed in Bitcoin. You rented an apartment, your rent was in Bitcoin. Not that you paid it in Bitcoin, that you figured out what the Bitcoin equivalent was for $1, that when you actually rented your apartment, your monthly payments were fixed in a quantity of Bitcoin, right? So salaries are in Bitcoin, rents are fixed in Bitcoin. You go out and buy an insurance policy, the premium is in Bitcoin. The benefits are paid in Bitcoin, right? You have a whole world where Bitcoin is used exclusively, where nobody tries to do a calculation. Well, what is the dollar value of this, right? When you go into a store in America and something is $10, you don't try to calculate in your head, what does that mean in terms of other things? It's $10 is $10, that's the price, right? So you'd have to be able to transact in Bitcoin in that kind of world, where I could make you a loan, or Pomp could come to me and say, Peter, I need a loan. Can you lend me a Bitcoin? I'll pay you back, in 5 years. I'll give you the same Bitcoin, and I'll give you, 5% interest a year in Bitcoin. We'd have to be able to agree on a loan where the only thing in the loan was Bitcoin. So if we could actually get to a world where Bitcoin can function, because, we're in a world right now where the dollar functions like that. We used to live in a world where gold functioned like that. Where all these things were done, all these calculations were in gold. Everything was priced in gold. Whether the gold was represented by dollars or not, even when the gold was represented by dollars, the dollars were fixed to gold. So those calculations were still there. So if Bitcoin can actually be a medium of exchange, a unit account, and a store of value all at once, and does that over time, then I'd have to say, I guess I was wrong about Bitcoin. But we're not even close to that happening.
Do you think there's validity in that argument of just don't fight the Fed and just go buy the assets that they're going to pump up in price?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing myself. But, I am buying assets that I think represent better long-term values, not these highly speculative assets that I think, no matter what, are eventually going to collapse, right? I mean, whether the Fed, pricks the bubble with rate hikes or whether the bubbles just deflate, on their own, that is what happens to bubbles. I mean, they never just continue indefinitely. So yeah, I don't want to own cash. So my personal portfolio is long equities. I own a lot of stocks all around the world, good quality companies that I think are trading at low valuations, that have high dividend yields, that are in sectors that I think are undervalued. They're in countries that I think are more stable and where the governments are not going to be under as much pressure to debase the currency, to sustain budget deficits or trade deficits. I do have a lot of focus on resources, natural resources, commodities, not just gold, but all sorts of industrial commodities, energy, agriculture. I have emerging market exposure because I think the emerging markets will outperform the developed markets in an era of higher inflation and dollar devaluation. I own physical gold and silver. So I'm fully out of the US dollar, and I understand why other people would have an aversion to hold dollars. I would just argue with their decisions on what to buy. And maybe some of the things that other people have been buying over the last 5 years or so have done better than what I've been buying in general. But I don't think that's going to hold up much longer. I think ultimately the portfolio of stocks that I've put together for myself are going to prove to be a much better performer in this environment than a lot of these stocks that have done well so far, but I think will not do well when we really start to see the inflation take off and the dollar really collapse. And then I also own real estate. I don't only own stocks. I mean, I have money invested in real estate. Again, real estate is a real asset. And again, all real estate is not the same. And so, some real estate is different than other real estate, but it represents a viable alternative. Because when you have inflation, you have to understand that not only is it a tax where the government takes your purchasing power and gives it to somebody else, but it's also a giant transfer of wealth from creditors to debtors. So the people who have borrowed money make wealth or transferred purchasing power at the expense of those who have loaned the money. And if you think about it from the government's perspective, the US government is the biggest debtor on the planet Earth. I mean, it's probably the biggest debtor in the whole universe. I mean, to the extent that there's life on other planets, I'm sure they haven't borrowed as much as the United States government. So we're probably the biggest debtor there is in the universe. And as the biggest debtor, the US government has the most to gain from inflation because it screws over all of the people who loaned it money. But when the government is screwing over all of its own creditors, they also screw over all the private creditors. And so you don't want to be a creditor, you want to be a debtor. And that's one of the reasons that so many people take on so much debt. But of course, the best thing you can do with the proceeds from debt is to acquire real tangible assets, whether it's real estate, whether it's stock, whether it's a private business, because you buy something real and then you end up not having to pay for it because you borrow the money and you buy a real asset, and then inflation destroys the value of the money, and then you pay back the loan with practically worthless money, but you still get a real asset. Whereas the lender loans you money that had real value, and you pay him back with money that has much less value.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.